Check, check, check.
All right, that sounds good.
So this is a new feed, right?
New feed.
All right, new feed, live people. Neil and I, we are live. Ask whatever marketing questions you have. Just drop in the comments. If it's really good, we will add it to the queue. But we're just gonna go ahead and then we'll stop to answer your questions as we go through it. You've got about an hour and 30-ish minutes with us, so enjoy. And are we rolling?
We are rolling.
All right, here we go.
Wait, well, one second. Yes, we're rolling.
All right, welcome to another episode of Marketing School. I'm Eric Sue.
And I'm Neil Patel.
And today we're going to talk about how to collaborate with influencers that are quote unquote bigger than you. So let me share a story real quick. Neil, when I was 25 years old, or maybe 25 years old or so, I was reading QuickSprout, your old blog, and I was reading something on link blending. And I was like, is this guy just making stuff up? And so I started emailing you, and this guy actually responds to emails. This is when Neil was getting bigger and bigger. He's not quite a big a deal as he is now. That's what his LLC is called.
I'm still not a big deal.
He's a bigger deal now than he was before. But at the time, it was like, oh, Neil, right? To me, he influencer at the time. And so what I did was I started asking him questions, and he started responding. But eventually, I was like, I can't keep milking this. I milked it for as much as I can because he kept giving me more value, where I was eventually like, okay, how do I add value to this guy? So what I learned at that time was if you want to work with people that are quote unquote bigger than you, you have to look into what they want or what they're interested in, and then you have to see how you can collaborate. I couldn't reach out to Neil at the time and be like, hey, what do you need help with? Because me asking him for help inherently puts the onus on him to have to think about what he needs help with. He already has enough help as it is, but asking a question is like, oh, I have to think about it. But instead of doing that, I could just go to Neil and be like, hey, look, I know you're really interested in growing your blog. I have this solution for you, and you can have it for free. Something simple like that, right? Like a free, could be like a free tool, or it could be like me offering to work for free, right? That's just an easy way that I got acquainted with Neil in the first place, and that's how I quote unquote got to collaborate with an influencer quote unquote bigger than me at the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can end up doing it. First, I'm going to break down how other people have partnered with me, and I'm going to break down how I've partnered with other people who are much larger than me. So Eric knows this. What's the key to partnering with me?
Take it off your plate.
That's right. And that's the key to partnering with any influencer that's usually larger than you. I'm not saying I'm larger than Eric, but in theory, if you can make sure the other influencer has no work to be done or little to no work, they'll do it. It's much easier for them to say yes. So I have a lot of advanced guides on QuickSprout. A lot of them were co-written by other people. I wrote one with Aaron Aegis on the Guide to Personal Branding. Not only did he do the majority of the work, he even promoted it and pushed it out to every single one of his LinkedIn fans or followers or connections and manually messaged it to them. So that's an example of getting other people who may not have as big of a name partnering up and pushing them. And that created a win-win situation. I'm getting more content, I'm getting more traffic, and Aaron's also getting the brand recognition. Now, on the flip side of that, I also have partnered with other people who are much bigger influencers than me. Some are much more well-known online. Some aren't well-known at all online, but they're much more powerful because, let's say, they created a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company or whatever it may be. The key for me to partner with them, they don't care about my brand. To them, I'm peanuts, right? I'm insignificant. I pretty much don't matter, which is fine. It's the reality of it. But if I can make their lives easier, do all of the work, they're much more likely to say yes, and that's how I've gotten a lot of them to say yes. I do the work. Now, I've even had situations where I've partnered with some of these influencers, and I've done all the work, and it hasn't worked out because at the end, they just drop the ball or they don't move forward, and you'll experience that as well, and that's okay. It's a numbers game, and as long as you do the majority of the work, you'll find it to work well. If someone is roughly at the same level as you, has the same amount of followers or engagement or whatever it may be, then you can probably split the work, and it's mutually beneficial for everyone to promote each other.
Yeah, and I look at this also, some people are maybe thinking, oh, I have maybe 1,000 Instagram followers and maybe someone else has 100,000 Instagram followers. How do we collaborate in that sense, right? But in that scenario, I would look at everything you have in your inventory. Maybe you have a YouTube channel, maybe you have an email list. And, apples to apples, like 10,000 or 1,000 followers versus 100,000 is not a good it's not a good trade, right? But if you do have other elements that you can bundle together and collaborate, that makes more sense because you want to make sure it's equal. Or here's the other thing, like so like from an Instagram, YouTube perspective, you bundle things together. That's the first takeaway, right? Now, second thing is this. I remember one time, I think it was either Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger. They wanted to work with like an investment mentor, right? And I think this guy was like a super successful investor. And he said, actually, you should be paying me for the internship because you're actually learning, right? So just keep in mind, like that's something to keep in mind when you're working with someone that's quote unquote bigger than you. They have their time is just so much more valuable to them, and they have a lot more to lose by working with you. And it's actually a lot more valuable even if you're working for free for them, right? So keep that in mind. It's not like just because you're offering work for free doesn't mean you should feel entitled. Because I certainly felt that way in the beginning, like, oh, I'm doing all the work, I deserve it, right? But the reality is you don't really deserve anything in life. You like eventually, like Neil said, it is a numbers game, and it'll start to work out in your favor as long as you have the right habits there.
Yeah, and keep in mind, it really is, as Eric mentioned and I mentioned, it's a numbers game, but you also have to be patient on top of that. I remember I started doing stuff with Mike Larrington, Pete Cashmore from Mashable, Gawker Media back in the day, Read Write Web, what else, VentureBeat, and a lot of these popular sites. And I would try to do collaborations with them and do things like where I would do the marketing for them for free. In exchange, they would promote me. And it was a pain, like to get some of these guys to respond, but I was just persistent. It took me over 6 months to convince Michael Arrington to work with me.
TechCrunch.
TechCrunch. And at that time, he wouldn't. I ended up working with one of his competitors, Pete Cashmore from Mashable. I promoted Pete, made him more popular. Pete promoted me back in exchange for that. And then Michael's like, oh, I see you're doing good work for Pete. Let's talk now. And then he eventually came back, but it's all about being persistent and not giving up.
There you have it. So if you want to learn more about stuff like this, if you want to talk to some cool entrepreneur influencers, by the way, Neil and I, we're doing a meetup, a mastermind in Beverly Hills, November 4th and 5th. All you have to do is go to marketingschool.io/live. That's LIVE to go and learn more. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Cool. Okay. Good to go. You guys ready to jump in the next one?
Yeah. Do you want to pop the questions for the next one? We'll do the next one and then get the questions up. Okay, let's do it.
All right, loading that up, and we are rolling.
Get your questions in there.
2, 1.
Welcome to another episode of Marketing School. I'm Eric Sue.
And I'm Neil Patel.
And today we're going to talk about how Peloton beat SoulCycle. So Peloton, just to give you guys some context, Peloton is a stationary bike or a treadmill, and basically there's a screen in front of it where they can give you kind of on-demand training, right? It can be live or it can be on demand. And I have a Peloton bike. Neil has a Peloton treadmill. Really good machines, and you end up paying like $2,500 to $3,500 or so for the actual machine, and you're paying a monthly subscription. So it is a SaaS model, so software as a service. And then SoulCycle is now owned by Equinox, and SoulCycle it's live kind of cycling classes where you go for 45 minutes. You're in a room, it's dark, you're listening to kind of EDM music or sometimes like 80s music and all that, but you're going at it, and you sign up for the class, you pay like $30 a pop. And different business models. I think SoulCycle exited for maybe slightly under $100 million to Equinox, because Equinox saw them up and coming. And then you have Peloton, who is now actually filing to go public at an $8 billion valuation. So that's the context behind it. So Neil, what are your thoughts? I mean, we're saying Peloton beat SoulCycle.
Yeah, well, the reason Peloton is winning is because, one, it's in the convenience of your home. 2, it's actually cheaper from being parking, all that kind of stuff. And then the other issue that you end up having is the product experience, in my opinion, isn't as great as Peloton. So Peloton provides such an interacting and competing with the other members. And this is one of my favorite things about Peloton. I can compete with all my other friends on Peloton, and it's not limited to people who are just living within my city or my region.
Yeah. So how long have you had your machine for?
Almost a year,
okay.
Almost a year is my guess.
Okay, I've had mine sort of high-fiving him and stuff, and he ended up beating me. His output, which is like kind of how you score at the end, he outputted like 350 watts or something, and I outputted like 200 or something, so he beat me by a lot, right? Point being, like, it gets your competitive juices going, because that actually the next morning I woke up and I'm like, I want to go harder, and then it's gamified really well. You have a leaderboard, you can see older people beating you, and it's like it really hurts your ego. And then you see that
It does.
I have someone in their 60s just riding past me. I'm just like, what's
Yeah.
going on? And my personal, it shows your personal best constantly. So this morning I actually overexerted myself to just beat my personal record. I wasn't planning to do that, but I did. So point being, from a retention standpoint, like it's gamified so well, there's numbers. So from a business perspective, people always talk about Peter Drucker, what you measure, like what gets measured gets managed, right? And at SoulCycle, they tell you to increase your resistance or whatever. You kind of have no idea what the hell is going on, but when you're doing this, it's like, okay, it's like get it to this number, get it to this number. We're gonna be doing this for 1 minute or so, and there's an entire dashboard that you can see. So it's good for retention, and it's much cheaper than Neil's point. So software as a service model, they pay $39 a month. It's a much better deal than paying $30 per class. That's non-refundable. There's so many times where I didn't wake up for a class and I just end up eating the $30 cost. It's much more convenient. The machine's sturdy, and they come into your house. There's a nice experience. They set everything up for you. So overall, it's just a premium experience, and it's hooked up with your apps too, where you can share it with everyone. So from that standpoint, Neil and I